When Marcus saw the 12-year-old girl carrying heavy concrete blocks in the rain, he made a decision that would change everything. He spent his last $3,000 to buy the child's freedom from cruel traffickers. What happened next shocked the world and delivered the most satisfying revenge imaginable. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Marcus Williams gripped the steering wheel tightly as rain poured down on his windshield. The 35-year-old single father had been driving for 3 hours, returning from another failed job interview. His old car struggled up the muddy hill when suddenly he saw something that made his heart stop. At a construction site beside the road, a small girl was carrying heavy concrete blocks. The child looked no older than 12, her thin body trembling under the weight. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her face showed pure exhaustion and fear. Marcus pulled over immediately. His hands shook as he walked toward the construction site. A large, cruel-looking man with a thick accent was shouting at the workers. "Excuse me," Marcus called out to the supervisor. "That's just a child working there." The man turned around. His name tag read Victor Petrov. He had cold, dark eyes and a nasty smile. "Mind your own business, stranger. The girl owes me money. She works until every penny is paid back." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. "How much does she owe?" Victor laughed loudly. $3,000, plus interest that grows every day. The little girl has been here for 8 months already, and she's nowhere near finished. Marcus looked at his worn wallet. Inside was exactly $3,200, every penny he had saved over 2 years. This money was supposed to pay for his daughter Emma's school books and his son Jake's asthma medicine. Winter was coming and they needed warm clothes too. But as Marcus watched the trembling girl struggle with blocks twice her size, he knew what he had to do. "I'll pay her debt," Marcus said firmly. "Right now." Victor's eyes lit up with greed. "You serious? Cash only, no credit cards or checks?" "I have cash," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. 30 minutes later, Marcus was driving away with the frightened girl sitting silently in his passenger seat. The child hadn't spoken a single word since leaving the construction site. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked gently as they stopped at a red light. The girl looked up with huge brown eyes filled with terror. "David," she whispered. "Please don't hurt me. I'll work harder, I promise." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. "No one's going to hurt you anymore, David. You're safe now. I give you my word." David didn't believe him. How could she? For 8 months she had known nothing but pain, hunger, and endless work. Her own uncle had sold her to Victor to pay gambling debts. Every adult in her life had betrayed her. Marcus drove David to his small 2-bedroom apartment in the poorest part of town. The building was old and the paint was peeling, but it was clean and filled with love. "Dad, you're home," called out Emma, Marcus's 14-year-old daughter. She stopped short when she saw David. "Who's this?" "This is David," Marcus said softly. "She's going to stay with us for a while." Jake, Marcus's 10-year-old son, came running from his room. He took one look at David's scared face and torn clothes and immediately offered her his favorite stuffed animal. "Here," Jake said kindly. "Mr. Bear always makes me feel better when I'm scared." That night, Marcus gave David his own bed and slept on the couch. He found David some of Emma's old clothes, made her a warm meal and ran her a hot bath, the first one David had taken in months. As David soaked in the warm water, washing away months of dirt and pain, she began to cry. Not from sadness but from the strange feeling of being cared for. "Why are you helping me?" David asked Marcus later that evening. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the girl who reminded him so much of his own children. "Because every child deserves love and protection. And because I can see something special in you, David." The next morning brought harsh reality. Marcus checked his wallet, he had exactly $12 left. The rent was due in 2 weeks and he had no idea how he would pay it. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "I heard you on the phone. We don't have money for my school books, do we?" Marcus looked at his brave daughter, who was trying so hard not to show her disappointment. "We'll figure something out, sweetheart. I promise." Emma smiled and hugged her father. "It's okay, Dad. I can share books with my friends. David needed help more than I need new books." Marcus had to leave the room to hide his tears. His children were teaching him about generosity, and they didn't even know it. The following weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life. He worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, doing construction during the day and delivering newspapers at dawn. He came home exhausted, but he never missed tucking David into bed or helping her with the basic reading lessons Emma had started. David was incredibly smart. Despite having no formal education, she learned to read within weeks. Emma became her patient teacher, and Jake became her loyal friend and protector. But David still woke up screaming from nightmares. She flinched whenever adults raised their voices. She hoarded food under her bed, terrified that it would be taken away. Marcus was patient. He never pushed David to talk about her past. Instead, he showed her through actions that love was real and that families could be trusted. 3 months after David's rescue, Viktor Petrov showed up at their apartment building. "I want the girl back," Viktor demanded, standing in their doorway like a mountain of evil. "You can't just steal my property." "David isn't property," Marcus said firmly, standing protectively in front of the children. "She's a human being and she's staying right here." Viktor's face turned red with anger. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a poor loser who can barely feed his own kids. I'll be back, and next time I won't ask nicely." That night, Marcus sat up all night with a baseball bat watching the door. David found him there in the morning. "Are you going to send me back?" David asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus knelt down and looked David in the eyes. "Sweetheart, I would die before I let anyone hurt you again. You are part of this family now and we protect each other. Always." For the first time since her rescue, David smiled. Really smiled. 6 months passed. Despite their poverty, the family was happy. David had started school and was already at the top of her class. Her teachers were amazed by her intelligence and determination. "David is exceptional," her math teacher told Marcus during a parent conference. "I've never seen a child learn so quickly. With the right opportunities, she could achieve anything. But opportunities cost money, and money was something Marcus didn't have. He was working himself to exhaustion, but they were barely surviving. Then something wonderful happened. A wealthy businessman named Robert Chin had been following David's academic progress through a program that tracked gifted students from disadvantaged backgrounds. He visited their apartment one evening. "Mr. Williams," Robert said, "your daughter David has scored in the top 1% nationally on every test she's taken. My company wants to sponsor her education." Marcus was speechless. Robert continued, "Full scholarship to the best private schools, plus college tuition, and a guaranteed internship program. David could have a very bright future." David looked at Marcus nervously. "What do you think, Dad?" The word "Dad" made Marcus's heart swell with pride every time David said it. "It's your choice, sweetheart. But remember, with great opportunities come great responsibilities." David accepted the scholarship. But she made one condition: she wanted to stay living with Marcus and his family. Robert agreed, impressed by the girl's loyalty. Years passed quickly. David excelled in everything she tried. She studied late into the night, driven by gratitude for the man who had saved her and the family who had loved her unconditionally. At age 16, David was accepted into MIT with a full scholarship. At 20, she graduated with degrees in both computer science and law. At 22, she was working for one of the world's largest technology companies, earning more money than Marcus had ever dreamed of. But David never forgot where she came from. She sent money home to help Marcus, Emma, and Jake. She paid for Emma's medical school and Jake's college education. She bought the family a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood. More importantly, David had been quietly using her skills to track down Viktor Petrov and the criminal network that had enslaved her as a child. Using her legal knowledge and computer expertise, David had spent 3 years building a case against Viktor. She worked secretly with FBI agents and international law enforcement agencies. Viktor, meanwhile, had expanded his operation. He was now trafficking dozens of children across multiple states, believing himself untouchable because of his political connections and accumulated wealth. On a cold Tuesday morning in November, federal agents surrounded Viktor's main warehouse. David stood beside the FBI director as they watched dozens of officers storm the building. "We've documented evidence of trafficking over 300 children in the past 5 years, the director told David. "Your work made this raid possible. Without your inside information and technical skills, we never could have built this case." Viktor was arrested along with 23 accomplices. 57 children were rescued from various locations. The story made headlines around the world. But David wasn't finished with her mission. During Viktor's trial, David testified as the key witness. When she took the stand, Viktor's face went pale. The scared, broken 12-year-old he remembered was now a confident, successful 23-year-old woman seeking justice. "Do you remember me, Viktor?" David asked calmly from the witness stand. Viktor's hands shook as he stared at the young woman he had once enslaved. "You took 8 months of my childhood," David continued. You beat me, starved me, and tried to break my spirit. But you failed. Because one good man saw worth in a throwaway child and showed me what real strength looks like. David turned to look at Marcus, who was sitting in the courtroom gallery with tears streaming down his face. That man taught me that kindness is more powerful than cruelty, that love is stronger than hate, and that justice always finds a way to prevail. The jury found Victor guilty on all 47 charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His criminal empire was completely dismantled, and millions of dollars in assets were seized to compensate victims. As Victor was led away in chains, David felt no joy in revenge, only relief that other children would be safe. But David's real revenge was the life she had built. Using her success, she established the Marcus Williams Foundation for Child Protection. She donated 60% of her salary and convinced her company to contribute millions more. The foundation built schools in poor communities, created job training programs for at-risk youth, and provided free legal services for exploited children. It became one of the most effective anti-trafficking organizations in the world. David also quietly paid for all of Marcus's medical bills when her adoptive father developed heart problems from years of overwork. She insisted on buying Marcus a small house with a garden, where the man who had saved her could finally rest and enjoy life. "You gave me everything when you had nothing," David told Marcus at the foundation's grand opening ceremony. "Now I understand what true wealth really means." On the 10th anniversary of her rescue, David organized a massive reunion. Marcus, Emma, Jake, and hundreds of other children David had helped through her foundation gathered in a beautiful park David had purchased and donated to the city. "I was 12 years old when a stranger decided my life was worth saving," David spoke to the crowd of nearly 1,000 people. "Marcus Williams taught me that one act of kindness can change everything. That love is the most powerful force in the universe." Marcus, now healthy thanks to David's care and no longer working multiple jobs, sat in the front row with his grandchildren Emma's twins and Jake's baby daughter. "But this story isn't really about me," David continued. "It's about all of us choosing to see the potential in others, especially those society has forgotten. It's about understanding that every child deserves a chance at greatness." The Marcus Williams Foundation had now rescued over 800 children and prevented countless others from being trafficked. David's technology innovations helped law enforcement agencies track criminal networks in 47 countries. Emma had become a pediatric doctor specializing in trauma recovery for abused children. Jake grew up to be a social worker focusing on family reunification. The entire family had dedicated their lives to helping others, inspired by the love that had transformed their own lives. Marcus, despite his initial protests about accepting help, had finally agreed to become the foundation's chief advisor. His life experience and natural compassion made him perfect for helping other families navigate crisis situations. "I never expected to gain a daughter when I spent my life savings on a scared child," Marcus said during a television interview that reached millions of viewers. "But David gave our family more than we ever gave her. She taught us that love multiplies when you share it." David's story inspired thousands of others to take action. Adoption rates increased dramatically. Donations to child protection organizations grew by millions. New laws were passed in 12 states to strengthen penalties for human trafficking. Viktor Petrov died alone in prison 4 years after his conviction, forgotten by everyone except the children whose lives he had tried to destroy. His criminal network had been completely eliminated. Meanwhile, those same children were growing up in loving homes, getting educations, and building bright futures filled with hope instead of fear. On quiet Sunday evenings, David would visit Marcus at the family home. They would sit on the front porch swing David had installed, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. "Do you ever regret it?" David asked one peaceful evening. "Spending every penny you had on a complete stranger?" Marcus smiled and looked at the successful young woman who had become his greatest pride and joy. "Sweetheart, that wasn't spending money. That was the best investment any person could ever make." "How do you figure that?" "I got 3 wonderful children, a purpose in life, and the chance to make the world better. Some people search their entire lives for meaning. You helped me find mine on a rainy Tuesday afternoon." David hugged the man who had saved her and changed the course of her entire existence. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." Today, David continues her work while raising her own family. Her 3 children know their mother's story and understand the sacred importance of helping others who cannot help themselves. The foundation now operates in 18 countries. Marcus, at 62, still travels internationally to speak at conferences and train other rescuers and law enforcement officers. Emma has treated over 500 trafficked children in her medical career. Jake has successfully reunited more than 200 families torn apart by crime and poverty. The ripple effects of one man's kindness continue to spread across the globe, touching lives on every continent, proving that love truly can conquer even the darkest evil. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the greatest changes in the world. Sometimes a stranger's love can heal wounds that seem impossibly deep. And sometimes, when we choose to see infinite value in those society has discarded and forgotten, we discover treasures beyond our wildest imagination. Marcus Williams saved one frightened child on a rainy day when he had nothing left to give except his heart. That child grew up to save thousands more. The circle of kindness continues forever, unbroken and ever expanding, proving that hope, love and justice will always triumph over cruelty and despair.